street ball or whatever. But what makes those guys that are just top of the heap, what do they do behind closed doors that when it's a minute left in the NBA Finals, all of a sudden it's like, that's the guy you want to have the ball? Like, what do they do?
Well, those guys who want the ball, like, they legit, they want it. Like, they actually want it that in the moment. But behind closed doors and just on their own time, I think one of the top skills, and I probably teach this to anybody that I work with across the board, is imagery. So just visualization, but instead of just picturing the images in your head of how you want things to go, but like try to make it real. Like put yourself, like what the walkout. You know, you're in the UFC. What is that walkout going to be like? Even go back to warm-ups. Like, how do you picture your warm-up? You know, what are your coaches saying to you? What are the feeling of the tape being put around your knuckles? And then, okay, now you're next up. You get the call. So picture yourself. What are you thinking about? All right, now go to the actual walkout. What music are you hearing? And then, you know, look around you. Embrace it. Like, notice the feelings that you're feeling. Don't, like, push them away. Like, embrace it. And then you get to the octagon. You're there. What do you want to be thinking about? And then the cage door closes. It's time to go. Bruce Buffer's announcing your name. Like, you're probably feeling some type of way. Like, what is it? What do you want to feel? And then watch the fight. Like, go do what you think you want to do. Execute your game plan in your head. Do all this in your head. And it's like an extra rep. It's reps. Like, you can't go and simulate a fight, like an actual fight. Like, your career wouldn't be very long in the cage. Like, yeah.
Like, yeah. That's
like,
true.
if every day you went and just were like, we're actually going to just MMA gloves, full-on fight to prep for this fight.
Shoot the Bucks Academy, bro.
And, yeah, right? And those guys, like,
were
they awesome?
Yes.
For a time.
Vanderlei Silva can't talk anymore.
I mean, right. There's consequences to how you train. So it's important to simulate it in certain times during the camp. And I'm not an expert on, like, periodization of training camps, but as far as the mental side, if you only, so me and you, we're about to fight in 8 weeks. Okay?
Okay.
So, you know.
You're a tall guy. I might lose.
I have a little range. You know,
I'm gonna have to do like I do Mason. I just have to put my taint on your face.
Well, I'll tap. So that's my Achilles heel is the taint to the face. So you and I we're about to fight in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
The night of the fight is my first time being there, like in my head. Like I don't think about it at all. Do zero imagery, zero visualization. You. During that entire 8 weeks, you're training, and I'm training too. We're training the same. But you, on your own time, are also like visualizing. You're picturing yourself being put in different situations. You're seeing yourself knock me out in 17 seconds. But you're also seeing me go up 2 rounds to none, and you have to like step your game up in the 3rd round. You're in all these situations. And then, so the night of the fight, who do you think? Like, who would you put money on? Just like off of this scenario, the guy who the first night is like mentally there is the night of the fight, or the guy who has been there 100 times in his head.
I mean, of course, a guy on 100 times in his head. I mean, it's the same thing when you go back to practice. You know, I train jiu-jitsu, and a lot of times when I'm training my guys for competition, I like to do simulated bad positioning rounds, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not necessarily because I want them to succeed in the drill. But it's like, oh, you're down 4 points. You have to get the sweep and the sub to win. It was like, work out of that situation. Work out of that hole, not only physically but mentally. Because that's such a mental battle, especially in the world of grappling. But I've never fought professionally. I've done, you know, amateur tournaments. But being stuck, you know, with a 250-pound guy on top of you trying to murder you. And you're just like, this sucks. You know, and sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't. But that mental rep is a huge factor. At least for me, it has been.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of crazy how how your brain interprets those situations. Like when it's really like to treat a lot of, like panic disorders or phobias, like exposure therapy is the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, easy example is you're afraid of elevators.
Okay,
you're afraid of elevators. Deathly afraid. Like, I can't even show you a picture of elevators without you freaking
I'm dead inside. I don't have any feeling.
Okay. So, the best way for me to go about this is to you voluntarily exposing yourself to elevators. So, like, okay, hey, can I pull up a picture on my phone of an elevator, and can you just look at it? And if you start feeling bad, then you want to back out, totally fine. Mm-hmm. Show you the elevator. Okay, yeah, I'm good. I can do that. All right. So then let's take the next step. Are you ready to take the next step? And then well, how about we like go to a building that has elevators? And then slowly we start building. Okay, now we can actually like go up and press the button to ride an elevator. We don't have to get on. We can just press the button and look at the elevator. And then eventually we're on the elevator. So you're gradually voluntarily exposing yourself to different situations to overcome this phobia. Well, performance, so imagery, you're voluntarily exposing yourself to, you know what, I really hate being on bottom, and like the guy's in a really advantageous position and I'm down 2 rounds to none. Like, okay, so he just took me down, like he's in side control, like I'm really uncomfortable. Put yourself there mentally and in practice. That way you can expose yourself to those situations. That way you feel more confident and you know exactly what to do when it actually happens. Does that make sense?
That sounds a lot like stand-up comedy, dude. I'm not going to lie.
There's so many parallels to really anything.
No, it's interesting, right? Because the stand-up comedy process, at least from my experience so far, you start off at the open mics. And there's a trope, and I'm sure anybody who listens to Rogan says it's like the first 5 to 10 years, it's just exposure therapy. Get up there and just talk.
Yeah.
Get up there and do your best, right? Just build a spine on stage. Some guys do it faster. Some guys take a long time. But it's just getting up there. Like, don't even worry about being funny. Just get through a set without clamming up.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is that?
It's, for me, I don't know. How can I put it? I mean, when I do stand-up now, I feel like a professional now versus when I first started. Like, now I could just be hanging out and then, oh, Daniel, it's your turn to go on stage. Okay, cool, whatever, let's just go. But in the beginning, it was just like, oh my God, I'm pacing the room. I go, it becomes this whole thing, and then I get in my head, and then it was very difficult for me to see myself doing well on stage. It was just, let me get up there and try my best. Now it's like I expect to do well. It's like, no, this is going to go well. Even if it doesn't go well, now it's like I can pick out the spots where it didn't go well and the spots that did go well in my set.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing because it's like I read all these books, like you talked about Mind Gym, Marcus Aurelius, like Extreme Ownership. We were talking about it off air. And it helps so much to know that I own the process of everything from not just the writing, but even the performing. Because I'm not one of those guys that I'm out there every night. I'm a married guy. I got a podcast. I got a day job. I got to do shit to make shit happen. Mm-hmm. But I do those little visualization things. Do you like the idea of using like psychedelics and marijuana to help and aid that visualization for some people?
I mean, I've never recommended that. I mean, people generally on their own can put themselves, because the goal is to simulate what you want to experience. Mm-hmm. And the night of a fight, I'm pretty sure you can't.
Well, in sport it's different. In sport is different, dude.
Yeah. Well, that's my world, right? That's my world.
For sure. Yeah, but there's nothing like performing on an edible. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. It's just, it doesn't do a lot for me.
Okay.
So that's not my world.
We're going to have to put you out and do some stage time.
Hey, you know what? I like to be in front of people. I like, I teach classes. I do all that. I have my own, what I call stand-up routine in front of people.
Yeah.
But I'm not a professional.
No. But it's an interesting thing because I look at guys like Conor McGregor on when I consider his peak of his powers.
Yeah.
He was always like, I saw this a million times before it ever happened.
Yeah.
How important is that for somebody like him? Because he's such a polarizing figure in the world of MMA and in the world of sport.
Yeah.
But he's undeniable. Like, the dude is a 2-time world champion in 2 weight classes simultaneously. But at the same time, the dude went from just murdering in the UFC, then fighting arguably a very... Depends on who you talk to. I don't want to piss off my boxing guys, but a very close boxing match with the best in the world. How does one correlate that? It's interesting to me. You know?
Conor's an interesting subject. I don't know him. Never talked to him. Don't know anybody who is close to him. But just from the outside, I know when he was coming up, something that I was really interested in, that I was like, I bookmarked that one. I think he was doing like a muscle up competition against an older guy.
Yeah.
And he lost. Like, Conor McGregor lost a muscle up competition to this older guy. And he was so humble, Conor McGregor was so humble in his attitude towards the guy. He's like, hey, I need to learn from you. How do you do all this stuff? Like, I want to come train with you to be able to do this stuff. And maybe he was putting on a show. I don't know. But that attitude, and you talk about, like, Jocko, like, humble, humility is, like, one of the top characteristics of a good leader.
Yeah.
Really a high performer. So, he was, in that moment, there's a line of research around having, like, a growth mindset. So, having the belief that no matter what ability level I'm at or what I was born with, I can always get better. And it seemed like he had that. Like, Conor McGregor had that growth mindset. Versus some people have more of, you say, like, a fixed mindset when it comes to certain, like, aspects of their life. Is like, I was born with a certain amount of ability, and then, like, that's all I get. Where, hey, I'm a smart person, or I'm not good at math. I'm just not good. Well, then you're probably not going to expose yourself to math. You're probably not going to try hard. When somebody says you got a math problem wrong, then you're like, yeah, I suck at math, so what do you want me to do? Versus the growth mindset is like, hey, I'm not good at math, but how do I get better? Like, let me go get a tutor. Let me, like, do some math problems. Hey, I got something wrong. Show me what I did wrong. Just the mindset difference of somebody who wants to learn, like a forever learner, versus somebody who thinks, like, I have this amount of ability. Like, I'm just good. Like, I don't need to get any better. Like, I'm already God's gift to the planet on jiu-jitsu. Like, what do I need to practice for? Like, I can just go out and roll up dudes.
So, where does a guy like Conor McGregor, who was such a great example, and obviously we don't know him, we don't know his daily lives, but this is an interesting kind of, to me, as a fan of the sport and just the mindset, where does a guy like that go from being this humble guy, this constant learner, to in front of our eyes just a mess of a human being?
Yeah, I wish I had that answer. I wish I knew him so I could ask him these questions. That's really interesting to see that switch, and I would love for him to be the humble type more. Mm-hmm. That seemed like that's when he was at his best. Like, he talked so much shit still, but then like, I don't remember where it stopped, but after some of the fights, he would even in the post-fight interviews talk about, like, hey, win or loss, like, I do appreciate this guy. Like, he said that a couple of times. I'm like, whoa. So maybe the talking shit is just like a front. Like it's just a show, kind of like Colby Covington, maybe, you know, because behind the scenes,
Colby Covington has
he's
the green.
supposedly like the nicest guy.
And that's what they say, but
Right.
I'm a